Now I'm going to hand over to Chris to talk about the fourth study.
What we've been talking about so far is research looking at how people declaratively, consciously think about themselves as drivers. The last couple of studies that Niki and I have done have been looking at other aspects of driving cognition. In particular, we've been interested in looking at non-conscious or automatic thoughts or processes that people have in their evaluation of their driving ability. Now, these can be processes that you can objectively think about, think, yes, I am a good driver, or no, I'm not a good driver. But we can also have these automatic beliefs about ourselves and about others that occur outside of conscious awareness. They're automatic, we may not be aware we have them at all. And so some researchers from Harvard University have developed a way to tap this type of cognitive process, this automatic level of association. And what we have done is simply taken the measures that they have developed, so I want to make sure I give credit where credit is due, and adapted that measure simply to look at cognitions about driving ability. So I'm going to run through a very brief example of how we do this type of research, because it's fairly hard to get your head around sometimes. Here we have an example of an implicit association test. This is one of the earliest tests used to develop this type of procedure, and what it tests is simply whether people have an automatic association between concepts of men and women and the types of subjects they might study at university. So you might expect that there's a stereotyped masculine or male domain of the sciences and a stereotyped female domain of the liberal arts. And we're not interested in asking people whether you think science should be for men and arts should be for women. Very few people will agree with that. What we're interested in looking at is whether people have this unconscious association of being science being more of a male domain and arts being more of a female domain. This does relate to driving ability, or cognitions of driving ability. So, here are some words that I might flash up on the screen relating to being male or female, and these are simply meant to represent the concepts of men and women. Here are some words relating to the concepts of science versus the liberal arts. And here's the basic outline of what we do in the procedure. I might ask you, if I flash up a word relating to male, to categorise it using your left hand by tapping a key on a computer as quickly as you can, or if the word relates to female, to tapping a key with your right hand as quickly as you can. What the computer is recording is how quickly you can categorise those stimuli, and that measure of reaction time is what we use in this particular experiment. So I flash up the word female, you categorise it as female. I flash up the word sun, you categorise that as representing the category male. You do this a lot. Then we change the task, and you're now asked to categorise words related to science or liberal arts using the same procedure. First word I flash up is physics, you categorise that as science. Next word is philosophy, you categorise that as liberal arts. You do that a lot. I flash up English, for example. Then we get to our critical task. Now, what we're interested in here is measuring how quickly you can categorise words relating to male or words relating to science as one category. These should go together in our head if we have this gender bias, and words relating to liberal arts and female on the other side, and that should go together if we have the same gender bias. So the first word I might flash up would be man. You categorise that as male. Then I flash up arts. You categorise that as liberal arts. Then I flash up girl. You categorise that as female. I flash up physics. You categorise that as science. Mother, math, and so on. What I'm interested in there is the average speed to which you can make those categories, to which you can categorise those words. Then we do some other stuff, and eventually what we end up with is the other critical condition. Now, here we've swapped the gender categories. If a science word comes up, you're still categorising it on the left, and if an arts word comes up, you're still categorising it on the right. But you're now categorising male words with arts and female words with science. Now, if we have this gender bias, and we do, it's reasonably strong in a lot of countries, you should find this task harder. People tend to react more slowly because they have this bias. And it's not a prejudice, it's just this automatic association that we've absorbed from our culture, where we tend to link science with men and arts with women. So for the purposes of our demonstration, I might flash up sun. You're now categorising this on the right along with arts. I might then present physics. You're categorising that as science. Then male, again that goes with arts. Then biochemistry. Then mother, which goes with science. Chemistry, science, so on and so forth. So that's the procedure as it's previously been used by the developers of this experiment. What we did, again, was simply adapt this to look at beliefs about the self and beliefs about driving skill or being a skilled driver or being versus being an unskilled driver. And so here's what our task looks like. In one condition, you're asked to categorise words related to the self, like me, I, my, mine, self, with words relating to being a skilled or expert driver. And on the other side, you're asked to categorise words relating to other people, others, them, they, their, with words relating to being an unskilled or useless driver. If people have this above average effect at an automatic implicit level, like what Niki has shown with her survey research, then we should find that people can do this task more easily than the alternative, which is where you're categorising words relating to others with being more skilled and words relating to myself with being an unskilled or clumsy driver. And in fact, we see very good support for this hypothesis. People react far more rapidly when they're pairing skilled words about their driving ability with concepts of the self. They make that pairing much more rapidly, much more easily than they pair words relating to being unskilled or bad drivers with words relating to the self. And here's a slide actually showing that data. What we see in this slide is a comparison of the strength of the above average effect for explicit reasoned tasks where I say, I rate I'm this much above average in terms of my driving ability, or this much below average, or perhaps completely average. And those are our hollow white bars. And we see that those are above 0. 0 on the scale represents the same as everybody else, represents the theoretical average effect. So you see quite a strong above average effect. However, we see a massive, absolutely massive above average effect when we use this implicit automatic measure of driving cognition. And so what we can conclude from this is that yes, people have this reasoned, thought out process where when you ask them, they go, yeah, I think I'm better than others. But at an automatic level, people truly believe this. They believe it very, very strongly, much more strongly than what they say, in fact, which is quite interesting. You might expect it to be the other way around, where people are going to want to self-present and say they're better than they might think they are. But actually, when you ask people, it seems they might even be downplaying this, and at an automatic, feeling in your guts level, people think they're much more skilled and expert drivers than others. Now, there are a number of reasons why we should care about this effect, and this is ongoing research, but one of the ones that troubles us the most is that we have a number of studies showing that this implicit driving measure is highly predictive of the number of demerit points people have. It's highly predictive of whether they've got a speeding ticket. It's highly predictive of their self-reports again, of how much they say they speed. So it's predictive of the extent to which people have been caught and ticketed speeding, and also predictive of the extent to which they say they'll speed. We don't know about cause and effect there, because this is correlational research measuring both of these variables at the same point in time. But what it does suggest to us at this early stage of our research is there is a link, a very reliable, quite strong link, between this automatic aspect of thinking about your ability as a driver and whether you're going out and speeding on the roads. So this might be something we can address by trying to intervene to affect people's levels of automatic driving cognition. How would you do this? Well, we're working on this again at the moment, but one early study where we started to look at this issue was to replicate Niki's earlier study by presenting people, undergraduate students, young drivers, with different sets of advertisements. In our study, what we did was we presented people with either the same 3 ads, what we would call a negative frame, where they show the negative outcomes of dangerous or reckless driving, crashing, killing people, dying, pain and suffering. We compared that to what we'd call a positively framed set of ads, which show the positive, good outcomes of not doing that behaviour, of choosing to take a cab home, of choosing not to drive home from the party, the positive outcomes of opting not to do the undesired behaviour. And we also compared that to a control set of ads, which were ads that had nothing to do with driving whatsoever, but were about the same length. And what we see is very interesting. What we see, if you look at the left side of the figure, is that we see a main effect where the positively framed ads, the ads that model the behaviour we want people to do, choosing not to drive drunk, choosing not to speed, those ads dramatically reduced this declarative, reasoned, thought-out self-enhancement bias. When people saw those ads, they were less likely to say they were above average. So these ads, it seems, and we've got to keep in mind this is immediate. What we're looking at with these ads is how they're affecting people's immediate thoughts and cognitions within the next couple of minutes. I want to be very clear about that. That is what we are studying, immediate cognitive effects of being exposed to these ads, and nothing more at this stage. Now, within this couple of minute window after seeing these ads, they drop people's explicit self-enhancement bias quite dramatically, in fact. The negative ads, although they look like they might drop it somewhat, we did not detect a reliable difference from the control condition. So this effect, this very promising effect of advertisement condition on the declarative or reasoned bias, what people are consciously thinking, seems to be driven by these positively framed ads. However, and on a somewhat depressing final note, these advertisements have no effect on the implicit or automatic, uncontrolled bias. So whether you see a positively framed ad, a negatively framed ad, or just an ad about something completely different, has no effect on this implicit automatic extent to which we, in our guts, think we're better drivers than others. And it's that automatic or implicit bias that our research is suggesting has a unique contribution to predicting whether people are speeding or crashing. And so really what we'll finish with here is just a brief summary. I mean, this is where our research is at the moment. What we're doing right now is we're trying to develop a far more up-to-date and relevant set of stimuli to do this automatic reaction time assessment using very controlled images of driving safely or driving dangerously, and trying to look at these cognitions in a lot more detail. And our results there are very promising in terms of being able to predict this type of stuff and looking at gender differences in the effect.
So thanks for listening to our presentation. I hope it's given you some food for thought about how people are driving in a social context, thinking about themselves, thinking about others, and how all of this is really important in the kind of messaging that we give and the kind of decisions that young people are making.